Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your end of day as well as end of week recap for I was going to say Tuesday. It is not Tuesday. It is Friday, and is the 2nd of June. So we're starting the month off very interesting so far. A little bit of rotation on the tape, quite a bit of buying overall on the tape. And if you look at the performance for the day, which I will get to in just a second, but I just want to mention the risk disclaimer first. Make sure that you read through that. Everything that we're going through in this video is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. So, and before I get to this, to the performance, what I'm going to do is kind of just give you a quick recap of, where there was strong performance for the week, a little bit about the rotation that we're seeing on the tape. I'll also recap the week's performance for you, as well as what were the best performing sectors over the last month. Usually I do that right at the end of the month, but there's so much going on over the last couple of days in terms of the price action that we're seeing that I'm doing it today, which is the 2nd, and I'll just go back 1 month. It won't be perfectly the start of May, but close enough, because it will be 1 month. All right. And then I'll also tell you a little bit about Tribeca Trade Group and some of the things that we do here, as I'd like to do that on Friday videos. So yes, let's get to the performance. I don't have this highlighted, but SPY was up 1.5%, just about 1.5% for the day. The Qs, really not much to complain about there. They did underperform a little bit and maybe seeing a little bit of rotation, but clearly, like, this is a situation that we've had the last day or so, where it's more of, a lot of buying that's going on, right? Not so much just, hey, I'm going to get out of this and I'm going to go into this. It's just more a little, it's more so of just buying across the tape, but, clearly buying into some things that have been underperforming a little bit. So, and that's where we kind of get into both the Dow stocks, which were up 2.2%, right? They've been lagging. And of course, the small caps and the micro caps, those were up just a huge amount today, up 3.6%. Just to kind of, I'm going to stop as I go through some of this performance and just talk a little bit about some of these charts. But this is the highest level that we've seen, just like that, for IWM. One of the things that I notice here is that gets us out. We gapped up. We spent so much time in this range, and boom, this is sometimes how things resolve. And look at the volume in IWM too, kind of confirming that. But we jumped over and out of the value area for the month of June, and we're actually above, we're the highest level that we've seen going all the way back to March, right? This has been a mess, right, in terms of the last couple months that you've seen in the small caps chart. And if you haven't done anything in this group, then I give you some applause, because there's been nothing to do in this group, right? There's been many other things that have been trending and showing performance. What we want to always do with the tape is monitor and wait for change, right? We don't have to be the very first, try to get the first move, right? If you are somewhat of an experienced trader, it's something that you learn, over time, that you don't have to try to get the very the very start of the move, right? You don't want to be bogged down in something that's doing nothing, because there's what's called opportunity cost in finance, right? And in trading, and you want to be in the things that are moving. Now, of course, when that changes, as IWM might be changing here a bit, it's the first time above its 200-day moving average since March, right? Maybe this might be the start of a move, and again, look at the other candles that we've seen over the last 2 months. This looks and feels different along with that volume. So I'm very interested to see if we get some continuation. Also, looking at even the smaller names, right? This is the microcap ETF, right? Keep in mind, there's 2,000 names in the IWM. So don't worry about what names are the top weights or anything like that. It is a very big, large basket of stocks. Same thing with the microcap ETF, right? Now, this did get to levels that we saw back on 523, but that was a failure, right? This is a bit of a different story. And look at the volume, by the way, on that failure of a day. But this is moving in the right direction. All right, so that's some things to kind of take note of. The S&P chart, which I do want to note too, because that has a a definitive change. We're above all of this range, right? You could see that I've had this trend line drawn in there too, right? Keep in mind, all trend lines are subjective. So, but that moves above there and it pops us out. And this is now a new high for this year. So congratulations, like you've made it through. If you're an S&P follower, this is a new high for this year. Qs, what can you say? I mean, this has been where the strength has been. If we look at the performance, where are we year to date for the Qs? Again, it astounds me every day to see this, but up 33% year to date. SPYs are up 12% now for the year. Whew, just very impressive. And of course, just a week ago, I think it was less than a week ago, IWM was red for the year. How quickly that just changed, up 4.4%. While I'm in this section, a couple other things to note. Look at the small cap value now is outperforming a little bit. Just last couple days, it's just 2 days of performance, but small cap value just turned in 2 blistering days and now up 5.1%. Again, when you put it in perspective, IWM was just a couple days ago was red for the whole year, and let alone in 2 days, IWM goes up 5.1%. It's just amazing how fast when the market wants to decide to do something, how quickly things can change. IWN, by the way, the small cap value is still down for the year, even after advancing 5.1%, and small cap growth is up 9.1%. And that's IWO and IWN, by the way. Small cap growth, IWO, small cap value is IWN. More larger cap growth, notice again that value, the last couple of days actually outperformed a little bit, right? So things like the banks, the financials, the industrials, right? A bunch of different metals and mining, right? Material names have done pretty well. And that beat growth the last couple of days. Not so much for the last 5 days. Growth is still up 4%, but again, very impressive to look at some of these numbers. Sectors, right? So overall, really big day for the banks. Could it be finally the turning point for the banks? We can look at the carry really quickly. I have not really participated in much of what's been going on here, but yeah, first time this is the first time back over the 20-day moving, right? Is it 20-day? Sorry, that's a 50-day moving average. First time over the 50-day moving average, right? A close over the 50-day moving average since March. Right, so that's pretty notable, right? So a change, and of course, look at the numbers on the bottom left here, right? This was the breadth for the day, super strong. I think one of the things that people are going to be watching is what the McClellan Summation Index does. For example, right, here's what this looks like on the on stock charts, right? In case you're not familiar with what I just said with the NYSE, right? This is the McClellan Summation Index, $ NYSI, and we've been seeing breadth that has been underperforming, right? So this is a nice, easy tool to use for a signal that says breadth is overall breadth for New York Stock Exchange stocks, whether or not they're expanding in breadth or contracting. And notice it's been a downward move, basically for a good portion of April and all of May. But we're actually, and this hasn't been updated for today, so we might actually be very close to that crossover with a 10-day moving average, right? And again, that's a big thing in terms of seeing more participation in the overall tape rather than, just tech and cyber stocks and semiconductors and internet names and software, right? All that tech, lumped in, and some consumer discretionary and some home builders, right? But now it could be just more areas of the market participating, more things moving. All right, so let's talk about a couple of those things, right? We went over. So again, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do at the Tribeca Trade Group. We start with a pre-market session, right? We do that every morning, starting right at 10 o'clock in the morning. What my goal is to give you a sense of like what's going on macro. We go over international markets. We go over what's up for economics. If there's any Fed speakers, if there's any other events to basically watch, like today was the jobs report, obviously. But it's it's, if there's anything market moving, I'll talk about that. For instance, we talked about how there was stimulus that was announced in China overnight. And I thought we might see a move out of we might see rotation today, right? And I talked about specifically the steel names, right? And the industrials, right? And the trade that I set up or talked about was Caterpillar, which was a hell of a trade today, in the trading room. So, these are, right. And of course, I participate in these trades too. It's not just like, hey, this is what you should do. This might be interesting, right? If it's interesting, I'm going to take the trade, right? And you could see, and this was just a day trade, out of Caterpillar, and I'll revisit this next week, but 226 and paid 216. So we do that pre-market session every morning. I try to highlight some themes and some possible trades, charts, etc. We also do a midday, right? So not a what I've tried to do is condense this a little bit for people who are now back to work and want to quickly kind of catch up over lunchtime and see what the hell's going on with the market. And I provide a pretty good snapshot in terms of that. I give you an update on all the positions. I give you an update on what our watch list is doing, right? And that's, by the way, that's something that I build over the week, and it's all linked up to Bloomberg API, so it's live. In my spreadsheet, it's live quotes, and I also give triggers for when something is breaking out of a particular area and is signaling to go long or short in my trading system. So you get all that, under your Tribeca Trade Group membership. Here's where and of course, we have a trading room. You could see trades. You could set alerts up for trades to see what I'm doing. Also, it is, as I see flow on the tape or as things develop, it's a combination. Sometimes there's no flow in some of the things I trade, but they're really setting up. Remember, option flow is great, but there's also another piece, and a larger piece, that's stock trading, right? So we capture what names are moving because they're being bought in stock, not just options, right? So you could see this is how this basically rolls along during the day, as I'll highlight, whatever is moving. All right, where to find out about Tribeca Trade Group, and then I'll talk about I'll talk about the performance. What did I do with this? Let me just find this really quickly. All right, so here you go. Here's our website. As you can see, I put out my performance. I tell you how I'm doing every month, and that's based on the trades that I'm sharing with you guys on a daily basis. And you could go right into this members area, as well as services and products, and you can find out a little bit more about what our programs are and how they're available. So again, that's TribecaTradeGroup.com. All right. Make sure you do that. And, I was just talking to a trader after hours about, it's so much more helpful, in my opinion, if you're trading with other people and bouncing ideas versus just looking at what's going on Twitter. I don't know how people do it. I see people that just use Twitter to try to help them. Yes, Twitter is a great place to kind of post ideas and so forth. But if you're not getting that dialogue back and forth and that teamwork that we really try to do, you're missing out on so much. So I would encourage you to check it out for a month. You don't have to sign up for a year. You sign up for a month, and if you don't like it, you cancel. But I think that you'll be pretty happy with what we do and the value that we add on an everyday basis. So let's talk about the performance. I said I would get to the performance for the week. There it is, a big week for, and again, this is 5 days. So apologies. This was a holiday shortened week, only 4 days. So this adds in the 5-day performance. It's just how I pick it up on my linked spreadsheet. But SPY was up 3.2%. Small caps outperformed by just a touch over the Qs, up 4.5%. Again, much of that performance coming today. Qs were up 4.4%. And basically, most of everything else did fairly well. Bonds were up. I haven't talked about too much of this in the end of day videos, but I mean, let's talk about our indicator nailing this. Down we went. I talked about how this was a head and shoulders type pattern, but we realized this downside target version point of control, that was a demand pocket down there, and a really nice rebound after that. Even though bonds were down today and yields were up, it kind of takes us basically away from that breakdown, which was higher yields. So I thought that was a great spot, and it really, I think, helped out the market to see bonds bounce like that. When we get into international areas, they continue to do well. Actually, emerging markets outperformed this week. That's something different too, up 3.2% for the week. And again, value versus growth. Areas that performed well. Again, keep in mind we're going back 5 days here, but the FANG, the internet names, up 6.6%. Chinese internet names woke up. They were up 6.5%. Again, that stimulus helping a bit. And look at the regional banks up there. Again, most of that coming from today's performance, but up close to 6% for the week. Consumer discretionary. How about that? It's something that I started to talk about in our weekend macro video, saying that XLY started to kind of shape up a little bit, right? Here's what this looks like on the weekly chart, right? It is starting to kind of, do pretty well. It was up 2.3% and a really nice weekly bar. You could basically, at this point, draw a trend line here and say, hey, that's a pretty nice break in terms of trend. So nice to see consumer discretionary. Again, a lot of this ETF is Tesla and Amazon, but you still have a lot of weight in some of the other areas too. So real nice move here out of this consolidation for consumer discretionary. Not a sector that we've talked that much about recently. Clean energy stocks did well. Steel, again, most of that performance coming from today, but steel and yesterday, steel was up 5.2%. I want to talk about, a couple of these names. One steel name that I like a lot is ATKR, right? This is Atcore. This will be on the watch list for next week. Let's see if it could break above 126.61. This is not an expensive name. I think the PE is like a 6. That's right, 6 for this name. So that's something that will be on the watch list for next week. Also, how about the home builders, right? They don't get that much attention. I just did a video yesterday talking about trends and talking about how the home builders were at a really important area, the 50-day moving average. Notice what they did at the 50-day moving average. Held and continued the trend, which is up. I bought some Pulte. I added a starter today in Pulte Homes. This has been such a strong name. Love the little consolidation and the break out of there. Toll Brothers, right, which caters to higher income housing. I mean, very impressive. And if you go through, many of these home builder charts, remember a couple of weeks ago when they reported earnings, there was like 6 or 7 of them that had blowout numbers, right, and had a really good price action. So again, people are, those talking heads that talk about, oh, there's only this many stocks that are, performing. Make sure that you include those home builders. Now, of course, they're not a big weight in the S&P. It doesn't mean they're doing poorly. It just means that they're underrepresented in a market cap weighted index, but they're doing just fine, as you can see from many of these home builders going back out to close to 52-week highs. Anything else that I wanted to mention here before we wrap up? International areas, there's a lot of groups. I mentioned a lot of emerging market areas. I kind of like this EWY, by the way. I don't hear too many people talking about it, but this is South Korea. What's in this ETF, right? Again, always important when you talk about an ETF. What is in it, right? So you think South Korea. Well, if you look at the basket, it's Samsung, right? It's Kia Motors, it's Hyundai, right? Those are names that, there's a lot of products that are here in the United States. And I think it's a pretty interesting looking chart if it can continue to rally from here. Much better looking than some of the other emerging market charts. Again, that's the EWY ETF. All right, and I mentioned too, the last thing that I would do is give you a little bit of a recap for what performed best for the last month. Again, it's 30 days look back. Semis, of course, I think you probably know that story at this point, but they were up 18% over the last month. Internet certainly was not was not a underperformer there. They were up 15%, software up 13%, overall tech up 11.6%, and so on and so forth. Again, a couple of these things like biotech showing up too, and the banks, again, most of the performance today, but up 8.5%. There's the consumer discretionary we just talked about, robotic stocks, which I really like this chart. And again, it's about 50% or 55% international. This looks like a great looking chart on the weekly, right? Just moving out of that consolidation, and I do have a long position in this in our TTG trend portfolio. All right, and then finally, as we kind of get down the list, what didn't perform well over the last month? Gold miners, right? You kind of come up with this scenario over the the one way that I would categorize this is pretty risk on, considering that consumer staples were down 5%, utilities were down almost the same percent, right? Healthcare, larger pharma down 2.5%. So there's the picture for the month. I try to keep it as short and concise as possible, but there's a lot of things to talk about. There's a lot more that we'll go through, and a lot of charts are starting to come around in other areas of the market, which we will provide a detailed watch list going into Monday. Guys, have a great weekend, and hope to see you in the trading room.